Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats at this time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 3 minutes. Please take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 1 minute. Please silence all mobile devices at this time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the National Deputy Director of the Minority Business Development Agency and CHCI alumnus from the Fellowship Class of 1992-93, Alejandra Castillo.
Muy buenos días. Good morning. On behalf of CHCI, I welcome you to this morning's closing plenary. I am proud to represent 35 years of CHCI's impact, and I stand before you as a testament to the founder's vision to create opportunities for all Latinos. I am the proud daughter of Dominican parents that came to the U.S. looking for opportunities after living a 32-year-long dictatorship. In 1970, my father's entrepreneurial spirit led him to open a bodega in the South Bronx, an act which exemplifies the value that minority-owned companies bring to our community. In a place where few saw opportunities, my father created jobs, provided services, and became a role model to many of the kids in the barrio. But despite my parents' best effort at the American dream, life intervenes. And suddenly my father died, and my future became very uncertain. Finishing high school and attending college became a distant dream, although I knew that I was destined for great opportunities. I just didn't know how I was going to make it happen. Possibly, like many of you, I was the firstborn American, the first to learn English, the first to graduate from high school, the first to go to college, and yes, the first to really bring the American dream to my family. So I must say, I humbly dedicate my achievements to the million of Latino parents that work every day to secure a better tomorrow for their children. But I also thank the teachers that came into my life, who inspired me and who challenged me to be the best that I can be. In 1992, CHCI was a God-sent dream. It is because of the foresight, the commitment, the dedication of CHCI that I now stand before you. I have been privileged to serve in 2 presidential administrations. Today, I serve in a position that allows me to impact the decision of top industry leaders to invest in minority-owned companies. I have the privilege to be able to help minority-owned firms access capital, contracts, and markets. Believe me when I say that, in particular, Latino entrepreneurial spirit is changing the face of the U.S. business community. We know that minority-owned firms, especially Latina-owned firms, are the fastest growing business. We also know that minority-owned firms are twice as likely to export. It is no longer a feel-good endeavor to help Latinos. I submit to you, if our nation is to continue to be globally competitive, it is a business imperative to invest in minority-owned firms. I thank CHCI and the leaders that made this investment and believed in our talents for paving the road, which has allowed me, as well as many of my fellow CHCI alum, to achieve the intellectual and professional potential. But most importantly, I am grateful to the extraordinary platform that CHCI has created for us to be agents of great change. This morning's session on the economy, jobs, and U.S. competitiveness could not be more timelier, as it becomes ever more evident that the growing Hispanic population is and will be the driving factor behind our nation's future prosperity. We look forward to a dynamic session with a panel of top experts in their respective industries. This year, CHCI is going social with our official partner, Facebook, and web streamlining live all of our sessions as well as our gala, thanks to the technology partner of AT&T. Today's discussion is framed by questions that have come from CHCI Facebook followers, and it isn't too late to join the discussion, as we will be taking questions from our Facebook followers as well as from here in the audience. So alert your friends to follow and watch live by going to www.facebook.com/CHCIDC. We want to thank our partners that are committed to developing the next generation of Latino leaders. I want to thank General Electric for their support. But I also want to thank our closing plenary lead sponsor, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, also known as SHRM, the world's largest association devoted to the human resource profession. Please help me welcome Senior Vice President of Membership, Marketing and External Affairs, Mr. Robert Carr.
So thank you, Alejandro, for that very kind introduction. Thank you, Esqua Aguilar. We also thank Representative Gonzalez, both of you, for your outstanding leadership of CHCI. Hola, mi amigos. Buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Oh, I can do better than that. How are you? All right, great. So it's indeed a privilege to again partner with CHCI, especially on your 35th anniversary. And I'm here to bring you greetings on behalf of our chair of the board, Jose Barrios, and our president and CEO, Hank Jackson. SHRM, or the Society for Human Resource Management, has been a sponsor of CHCI since 2009, and we look forward to being part of this event for many, many years to come. We're here today because we share common goals, common concerns, and more importantly, a common destiny. You believe in economic opportunity and financial security for all Americans, and you know increasingly the important role that Latinos will play in our nation's future, and so do we. And so do the 260,000 members of SHRM. How many of you have ever heard of SHRM? Wow, at least we've got one person. So, just for a brief introduction, SHRM has 260,000 members. We're HR professionals around. We're the people who do the hiring, so you should get to know the members of SHRM very well. Because this, and we know that this is an election year, and the decision that voters will make on November 6th will be shaped by the economy, by workplace issues, putting people back to work, addressing the skills gap in our workforce so that America remains competitive, and creating flexible workplaces that allow all Americans to pursue careers of their choices, and giving workers a sense of assurance that at the end of their careers, they can comfortably retire. We think all Americans should have affordable and high-quality health care. And all of that speaks to the heart of what HR professionals do each and every day. And for Hispanics, those issues are especially important. I'm going to just take a minute and just look at a couple of numbers that I think are important. As you know, Hispanics are fueling our nation's growth. More than half of the U.S. population over the last 10 years is attributable to the Hispanic population. But among adults, Hispanics and blacks top the nation's unacceptably high unemployment rate. While overall U.S. unemployment fell from 8.3 to 8.1% last month, that trend was not followed for blacks and Latinos. Latino employment remains stubbornly high at 10.2%, and for blacks, it's stagnant at 14.1%. And you know better than anyone else that the median household wealth for Hispanics fell by 2/3 over the past few years. But you know, with higher education, it's a great equalizer. Education is really the key to the success. And let me tell you, here's a challenge and an opportunity for Hispanics. We have a skills gap in the U.S. Our HR professionals tell us that they simply cannot find enough job candidates with the advanced skills their employers need. Right now, there are close to 4 million jobs that our members tell us that they can't fill because they don't have enough qualified applicants. We must ensure that Latinos are ready to fill that gap. Together, SHRM, the HR profession, and all of you, together we can help prepare Latinos to assist us in creating a more prosperous future for all Americans. We need to provide the education, the training, the professional development so that everyone wins. Latino workers win. They gain an education that levels the playing field. Our nation wins because our economy gains the skill it needs to remain competitive. And I win because somebody has to pay into Social Security so that one day I can retire. CHCI, like you, we have a vision for this country. Everyone has an opportunity to pursue the American dream with dignity and respect that comes from a good job and meaningful career choices. A place where we celebrate our heritage and we take pride in knowing that we are inextricably bound. One nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, CHCI, we have much in common, and the common good is what we all see. At SHRM, we're very proud to join you in your journey, keeping the Founder's promise. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al señor Carr. Un aplauso de nuevo por su esfuerzo en hablar el español también. So it's now my pleasure to introduce to you our session's moderator. A stranger to no one here, Maria Hinojosa has helped tell the Americans' untold story and brought to life unsung heroes in America and abroad for the last 25 years. In April 2010, she launched the Futuro Media Group with the mission to produce multi-platform, community-based journalism that respects and celebrates the cultural richness of the American experience. She is the anchor and executive producer of her own long-running weekly NPR show, Latino USA, anchor of the Emmy Award-winning talk show Maria Hinojosa, One-on-One from WGBH La Plaza, contributing correspondent for Frontline and Need to Know on PBS, and a weekly King Feature Syndicate contributor. Her latest project, America by the Numbers with Maria Hinojosa, Clarkson, Georgia, is scheduled to air on September 21st on PBS. Let's take a look.
This is the new America. Black, brown, gay, Muslim, you name it. We're a growing share of the population, but politically unpredictable. Together, we'll look at what these numbers could mean in this election year if we stand up to be counted. America by the numbers. Welcome to Clarkston, Georgia. By the numbers, it's one of the most diverse cities in the U.S. Emmanuel Ransom moved to Clarkston in 1963, the year Martin Luther King marched on Washington.
When I first came to Clarkston, the Ku Klux Klan used to march in front of my house right down here off of Ponce Leon. When I was a kid, my daddy used to take me out to Stone Mountain and we watched the Ku Klux Klan, and they would take an old car up on top of the mountain, set it on fire, and push it off the front of the mountain, and everybody scream and holler. You talking about exciting.
When you first got here, was the city council all white men?
Yes.
Was the mayor a white man?
Yes.
And did you feel like you were excluded?
Yes.
In Clarkston, whites became the minority by 1990, and now it's home to refugees from all over the world. What is this here?
This is a knife. When the bullet's finished, they slaughter the kids.
These were your children?
Yeah.
She's got a bullet in her hip still.
And I have a bullet and another knife here.
Another knife wound here, too. Since the early 80s, thousands of refugees from Vietnam and Bhutan and some 40 other countries have come to this area to escape war, starvation, and massacre.
When you come here, you already have hope. They dump them in these apartments sometime and don't tell them how to light the stove. They build a fire in the middle of the floor and burn apartments. We work hard. We're buying foreclosed homes. They need to be taught the American way so that they don't goof up.
Clarkston is full of refugees clamoring for U.S. citizenship and the right to vote.
Can you tell me what is the capital of the United States?
No one here has ever voted, and many were stripped of citizenship in their homeland.
People in America think democracy is given to them. I don't need to vote. Something like that. But for us, it's so important because we are doing for the first time,
What was your first reaction when you saw that Clarkston was changing?
Oh, thank goodness. When I bought the store, this was a pretty low-income neighborhood. It was a rough environment, and it has changed dramatically since the immigrants have come in.
Should white America be afraid of becoming a minority?
They should only be afraid of becoming a minority if it's within the old definition of what a minority means: marginalized, left out, disenfranchised. The new mainstream is inclusive. Everybody is welcome to the new mainstream.
Wow. What an amazing piece. Let me just repeat that one more time. America by the Numbers, scheduled to air September 21st on PBS, and I hope that each and every one of you will tune in. Damas y caballeros, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Maria Hinojosa.
Thank you. Hey, what's up? Oh, that's the first time that I've seen that like this. That's totally bad grammar. So it really means a lot to me that that you guys are watching. This is a very big deal. It's the first time that public television will air a news program that is executive produced and anchored by a Latina. So it is... And I swear, I'm really counting on you guys. They already told me, I'll be very honest. PBS just said, well, we like you, but we want to hear from the audience. So I need you guys. I really, really, really do. So start talking about it. Follow the Twitter, me, that whole stuff. I know you. Oh, boy. So So get involved and let me know, and definitely let us know what you think about this content. I'm really, really proud of it. And what I love about CHCI is also not only what they do como para nosotros, como una comunidad, but what they do in terms of building bridges. And so that television production was really supported in its core by the 5 quote-unquote minority groups. What happens when minority groups get together? Todo cambia. So that was supported by the National Minority Consortia, Latinos in Public Broadcasting, Native Americans in Public Broadcasting, Asian, Pacific Islander, African Americans. They came together to support that project led by a Latina who has her nonprofit based in Harlem, en la comunidad. So it really is, to me, una ganancia para todos, for all of us. I hope that you feel the same way about it, and I do hope that you watch. So, because ultimately, para mí, it's about the essence of democracy. Okay, the essence of democracy, as we know it, is that all of us are involved and engaged, no matter your status. It is about understanding that you have a voice y que en este país tenemos derecho a usar esa voz. ¿Sí o no? Sí, exacto. Bueno, I know that you know that because you guys are all CHCIers. We love them. What we have to do, what CHCI has been doing, what Latino USA has been doing for years and years and years, is to open the conversation about changing the narrative about Latinos, right? We know, you know, porque se los he dicho vez tras vez tras vez, de que the idea was to create Lou Dobbs so that there would be more advertising dollars for CNN. That was the idea. It was not because, you know, CNN was like, ooh, you know, he's preaching the right thing. No, no, no. It was a money-making decision. Well, we have to shift the conversation about the money makers and the consumers in this country, sí o no? Because if we actually talked about what we as Latinos have as potential, you know, $1 trillion plus market, people then stop, and we are not seen as a problem community the way Lou Dobbs framed us. It is about changing the narrative. And I'm just going to leave you with this final thought before we move into our distinguished panelist first. Be open to change your own narrative. Sometimes people will say things to you that you never expect. I met a dreamer at the Illinois Institute of Technology where they have, óyeme, somebody who has on her business card, undocumented student liaison on her business card at the Illinois Institute of Technology. It is a recognition of making the invisible visible. This young man, when I asked him, you know, how did you manage understanding your status? He was like, no, there's a niño from a kid I always knew. And I was like, how did your parents talk to you about this? And he said, we talked about it at the dinner table, but it was my teachers. What did they say? That I had to learn. I had to love to learn for learning's sake because the job was not going to be guaranteed. So he said, I love to learn. That's why I'm here. Not because I'm going to get a job, but because I love to learn. Is that changing the narrative on Latinos or not? Sí o no? Gracias. Okay. So we're going to, before we get to our distinguished panel, we're going to hear from Mónica Gil, two of our presenters on democratic data. Mónica Gil is with Nielsen. She is the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs and Government Relations for Nielsen, which, as you know, is a global provider of information and insights located in 100 countries. I didn't know that way back when, porque cuando era niña, I don't think that was what existed. Now she works extensively with elected officials, community leaders, and Nielsen's media, entertainment, and consumer businesses to promote the company's education, philanthropic, government, and public affairs initiatives related specifically to multicultural consumers. So now she is going to speak to us as the head of the Nielsen National Latino Strategic Outreach Project. She's going to talk to us about the economy, about consumers, about Latinos consumers, and how this is going to affect the Latino community. Thank you all for being here. Una bienvenida para Mónica Gil, por favor.
Yeah. Hola, buenos días. How you all doing today? Good? Good. Thank you for having us here today. I am Mónica Gil, as Maria mentioned, and most of you may know Nielsen. We're the TV ratings company, But what you may not know is that we're also the company that can measure what you buy in the stores, what music you download, and we can tell you that El Chavo del Ocho is the highest rated program, Spanish cable program of all time. That's us. But what I hope to do today is really give you very quickly a snapshot of how Latinos affect the economy. You know, there's so much discussion about our community and how we can influence brands, how we can influence housing, different areas and sectors of the economy. And I think one of the things that we need to understand as a market is that we consume, we watch, we buy, we read, we spend money. So let's get started. Okay, first things first. I think all of you can agree that the world is changing, and it's changing permanently. As a result of very unprecedented times right now, many companies are having to change the way that they do business. For a long time, companies believed that there was a lot of opportunity outside of the U.S., so they focused specifically on the BRIC countries. You all know what the BRIC countries are: Brazil, India, Russia, China. And these countries tend to have some characteristics. They're young in population, they have high productivity, they have an appetite for consumption, right? So let me ask you a question. If you were to think of those characteristics, which community has those same parallels? Which market in the U.S. has those same characteristics as the highly coveted BRIC countries? There's not much to write. All of you, Latinos here in the United States. We're rapidly growing. We're characterized by youth, as I see many of you in the audience, a market that fuels household spending and entrepreneurship. Does that all sound familiar? So Latinos, it's here right now. So if we were to put all the Latinos in this country together, the fact is that if Latinos were a standalone country, our buying power would be to rank the 12th largest economy in the entire world. So make no mistake about it, we are getting people's attention. And the growth of our population, as you all know, really is no secret to any of you. We have been called the silent majority, the sleeping giant, among many things. But perhaps what's even most important for you to note is that our future growth is even perhaps more important than our current size and our current wealth. Because you see, we can expect 167% growth in the next 40 years, compared to 42% for the total population. And it's important to know that of this 167%, our community is going to continue to grow even if immigration stopped tomorrow. We're still going to continue to grow. So in states like California and Texas, we're already 1 in every 2 births. In California, 822 children will be born tonight to a Latina woman. That's 34 every hour, 1 every 2 minutes. So if that doesn't tell you how important we are, that's right. So put it another way, just to wrap this conversation up, if you were to take all the Latinos in the United States and over the next 40 years, it's going to be equivalent to adding 10 additional New York cities populated with only Latinos. So give ourselves a hand. We're growing. In fact, there are approximately 96,000 Latinos in the United States, 131 born every hour. By 2050, we're going to be about 133 million, and this level is going to continue to grow. Just look at the top 100 surnames in the United States. Can anyone guess what the highest ranked Latino surname is? Garcia. There you go. Garcia is number 8, Rodriguez number 9, Martinez number 11. 1 in every 4 births are Hispanic every month. 50%, 50,000 Hispanics will turn 18 every month. Sorry about that. That was it. Latinos are going to be vital to any brand that is wanting to continue to grow. And they're growing in areas where we traditionally didn't expect. You know, we've heard of them in California and Texas. But, I mean, when did we ever hear about Latinos in Minnesota, for example? Account for 20% of the growth in the state. Or in Iowa, which grew by 60%. Or in Portland, 4 times faster than the rest of the population. So I think what marketers and people really need to start asking themselves is, can you afford to miss out on this opportunity with 52 million strong? Latinos, we can no longer just be viewed as a subsegment of the economy. We already have $1 trillion in purchasing power, but you all have probably already heard of that. The thing I really want you guys to take away from this slide is that we're going to grow our purchasing power in the next 3 years by 50%. There's probably no community other than ourselves that can do that. 50% growth. We're going to be at 1.5. I had mentioned earlier that we were the 12th largest economy. By 2015, we're going to be larger than all of 8 economies in the world, somewhere just below France and above Korea. So the conversation about Latino population needs to continue in terms of what sectors. I put this slide up because one of the things I wanted you to see is the 7 areas where you're going to see Latino growth, in which our sectors are going to benefit from Latino demographic change. Residential purchasing buying. You know, the average age to purchase a home is between 26 and 46 years old. Latinos are about 28 years old at the median age. So you're going to see a growth in residential purchasing over the next 10 years. Food and groceries, Hispanics, Latinos, we spend more on food inside the home. So for example, just so that you know, Hispanics spend roughly 38% more on eggs every year than the typical American household. Retail, especially in clothing and electronics. This was a surprise to me, actually. Latino men, they spend 7% more on clothing, particularly shirts, jackets, and uniforms. Education, we're all going to school. That's a good thing, where we're seeing numbers and increasing in our educational institutions. Financial services, since we're buying homes, you're clearly going to see an increase that banks are going to rely on us for mortgages and credit cards. Transportation, Latino men out there, you guys are supposed to contribute about $14 billion to the car industry by the year 2016. And entertainment and industry. You know, it's no secret that we like to watch movies, that we like to go to sporting events, and this is an area which you will definitely see Latino growth in. So when we go to the store, some things that you should know is that we tend to go to the store about 149 times per year, to the grocery store, that is. But when we shop, while we may go to the store less than the average American, we actually spend more. So on average, we're spending somewhere between $3,000 to $6,000 more than any other ethnic group in the stores. And when we go to the stores, what do our shopping carts look like? With the growth in the numbers, there really should be no surprise to you that we have a lot of purchasing in baby care, food products, diapers, all that type of stuff. But other things that pop out to me, shortening oil. Make no mistake about it, we still put manteca in our food. So this is proof that we do. We also like to take care of ourselves. We like to smell good. Men's grooming aids, all, you know, 3 flowers, whatever it is that you're wearing, clearly is coming up. Latinas, what can I say? We condition our hair about 9 times per week, and we're amongst the highest consumers of hairspray and bobby pins. We love our hair. And I think the other thing that folks need to know about us in our community is that keep in mind that the myth that we are not connected is not true. This slide here shows our data indicates that we are amongst the fastest adopters of technology. Latinos, we watch about 33 hours of television per week, and our households, we have about 3 TV sets. Unlike the general market, we tend to have a little bit different viewing habits. We tend to watch news, novelas, sports, variety participation, those types of shows, where the total population really likes police dramas, sitcoms, sci-fi. So what this is really telling you is that we don't just watch TV for entertainment purposes. We actually also use it as a tool to help us navigate through systems. We text and receive quite a bit of text, 941 per month. We make about 13 calls per day. And part of the reason for the higher cell phone bill is because we actually, when we use the internet, when we're online, we actually use it off of our mobile phones more than other ethnic groups. And we like to stream videos. We do a lot of that. That's double what the total population is. So with that being said, I gave you a quick snapshot. One of the things I hope you take away from this is that we are vital to this economy. We buy, we watch, we consume, and we spend money. So thank you. Thank you. I try to go fast.
Great job.
Thank you. I try to go fast.
Can't hear me. Now you can hear. Okay. You all know who he is. He's Dr. Matt Barreto, the co-founder of Latino Decisions, professor at University of Washington in political science. We know that with Dr. Gary Segura, he founded Latino Decisions, which we all turn to now for important information. So he's going to give us a little bit more specifics about current demographics and the upcoming election. He has fascinating news. Please welcome Dr. Matt Barreto. Doctor.
Hola, buenos dias. It's a pleasure to be with you here today to be addressing you on these important issues. As Monica just ran through a couple of very important and fascinating facts on consuming, the power of the Latino market, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Latino voters are telling us in our polling data related to the economy and also related to the election. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into the data and get started. What are the leading issues of concern? You see here on the left side of the screen, when we ask people thinking about the election, we don't frame it in any specific way. Just thinking about the election, what are the top issues? And certainly, we know this, and we've all seen this in lots of polling data. The leading issues of concern are certainly the economy, job creation. You see that some other issues stay in there. Immigration, healthcare, and education. We know these are also important in the Latino community. When we ask the question slightly differently, and I'm just going to start out the presentation in this way, and I'll come back to this at the very end. When we say, what are the most important issues in the Latino community that you want politicians to address? The economy and jobs are still very important, but we know that immigration is quite salient in our community. And I want to talk about how while the economy is certainly a leading issue of concern, and will be something that we've already heard the candidates talk about extensively, that immigration remains an important factor in this election. And we want to hear what the candidates say about immigration. But let's go back to the economy and let's talk about why this is such an important issue of concern. Well, to start out, I'm going to give you a little bit of a pessimistic note, why Latinos are frustrated with the economy. What is the main reason the economy is not improving quickly? We've heard lots of accusations. We just finished 2 weeks of the conventions, hearing the candidates tell us all sorts of things about why the economy is not improving. When we ask Latinos, who is to blame? Why is the economy not getting any better? 56%, a very strong majority, tell us it's because there's a lack of cooperation in Congress. The parties are fighting. They're not addressing our issues. And that's a common theme that we find, that while Latinos are engaged in this election, we're paying attention, there's a common frustration that the Congress is not addressing the issues, especially the economy. How should we solve these issues? Where do Latinos stand on how we should solve these issues? Well, thinking about the best way to reduce the federal deficit, one of the biggest issues we've heard about, we see an overwhelming percentage of Latinos want to see some amount of tax increases along with cuts. The most popular answer was just saying increasing taxes on the wealthy, that they can pay a little bit more. Rejecting the idea that we should only focus on cuts. And another large percentage, 37%, saying, yes, tax increases should be part of a solution with cuts. And that's where Latinos are looking, and I'll talk about that at the end as to why that has created some difficulties with Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan's positions on that. How about to fix the economy right now? What's the best thing that we can do? And we just gave a couple of options. Should we focus on lowering taxes? Or should the government invest in projects? And we see a clear majority again say the government should invest in projects. That's the way you stimulate the economy. There is about a third or so that says, yes, lowering taxes is a good idea. But we don't ever find more than about 29, 30, 31% who really embrace that idea that that's the best way to fix the economy. And this gets to a larger structural issue that we found repeatedly in the Latino community. This question is from the American National Election Study, a big national study that's done by the University of Michigan and Stanford every few years. And we said, thinking about today's complex problems in the economy is complex. It's not a simple and easy thing to fix. What should the role of government be? Overwhelmingly, 83% of Latinos tell us the government plays a role. We need a strong government to be involved, and it's not something we should just leave to the free market, to just let the market dictate and decide by itself. But that's not the only thing pressing in 2012. There's a lot of other space on the agenda for other issues to permeate, and that's where I want to come back and talk a little bit about other issues, including immigration. Despite its importance, I've tried to explain this to every reporter I've talked to, is that the only fascination right now is with the economy. What about the economy? The economy is doing bad, Latinos are getting impacted. Yes. But that doesn't consume 100% of our attention. There's a lot of other issues. In particular, we know that Latinos have told us repeatedly in public opinion polling that they support federal investment in education, that this is a top priority in the Latino community, and federal investment in healthcare, that while the economy and creating jobs is a concern, that's a concern we have every day. But we also want to see the government taking action in other areas. And as I said before, immigration remains an important concern because of the way it has been politicized today. So while the economy is a top issue of concern, which we agree with, we often find that immigration is a symbolic mobilizing issue. Why is that the case? Among voters, why is that the case? I think everybody in this room knows the answer to that. When we asked Latino voters, do you happen to know somebody who is an undocumented immigrant? A majority, 53%, said yes, they personally know somebody either in their family or in their close personal friends who is undocumented. Do you know anybody who's faced any deportation proceedings or been caught up in immigration checks? 1 out of 4, 25% say yes, they know of someone. I see a lot of people's heads nodding right now that these are people we know, they're in our communities, they might be in our families, and that's why this is such an important issue. Here's a piece of information after the Supreme Court ruling that we just had this summer on the Arizona law. We asked Latinos in a national survey, what do you think is going to happen now that the Supreme Court has upheld the let me check your papers provision in Arizona? And you can see a clear majority, 79% of Latino voters think this is going to lead to racial profiling. And we see that that continues across generations. It's not just immigrants that are concerned. Second generation, U.S.-born children of immigrants, 89% concerned about racial profiling now in the state of Arizona. And while the economy is the top issue, we can see that immigration is a mobilizing issue. Latino enthusiasm for the president, when we informed people about the record numbers of deportations that had been happening, you see there in the red bar, 41% were less enthusiastic. It made them less enthusiastic about the election when they heard about that. A week later, when the policy changed, and the president announced his support for the deferred action through the Department of Homeland Security, 49% said that made them more enthusiastic. So he went from a 19-point deficit to a 35-point advantage. That this is a mobilizing issue. This is something that does cause us to get excited and grab our attention. But finally, and I'll conclude just with a couple of points to remind you about the importance of participating in this election. The Latino population is large. We know that it's almost 53 million today. That's the blue bar. Go all the way down to the yellow bar at the end, 12.2. That's the number of voters we expect to participate in this election. From 53 million population down to 12.2. And what explains this discrepancy? Well, we know we're a young population. We know that some people are not U.S. citizens and eligible. But even among those who are eligible, you can see in the green bar, that's the number of eligible voters, 23.6 million. But only 15 million are expected to be registered. That's 8.6 million Latinos who are eligible to vote, who are not registered to vote. That's going to be the big challenge for the Latino community, that if we can increase our political power and presence, it starts with voter registration, and that will increase our numbers, and that will get politicians paying more attention to us. Thank you.
And be sure to leave me your card, porque tengo que hablar contigo. Oh my goodness, con toda esta información. All right, we're moving on to our panel now. So it is with great pleasure that I want to bring on Secretary Donovan, who is the 15th Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Shaun Donovan. So welcome to the stage. I'm doing this quickly. Of course, housing is a central part of our economic recovery. Next, we want to be joined by a dedicated member of CHCI's Board of Directors, who also represents the more than 4 million residents of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Representative Pedro Pierluisi. Hola, hola. I told Pedro, I was like, I'm a big fan of Puerto Rico. I've been reporting on it for 20 years. It's a fascinating, the paradox, sí o no. Okay, our next guest is a powerhouse in the media and the business world, Mónica Lozano, of course, in a leadership position as Chief Executive Officer of ImpreMedia. La mera. She is, of course, now still publisher and CEO of La Opinión. Hola, Mónica. And finally, we're going to be joined by Damon Silvers. He's the Director of Policy and Special Counsel for the AFL-CIO, and he serves on a pro bono basis as a Special Assistant Attorney General for the state of New York. Vamos, Donovan, welcome to the stage. Damon, not Donovan, Damon. All right, so we're going to start with you, Secretary. I know, as somebody who has bought a home and who refinanced a year ago, híjole, oh my God, it's painful. So what can you tell us now? And we want to keep it kind of going because we really want to bring the audience in. So And we know how that you can do sound bites, but we don't want them exactly in sound bites. We want a little bit deeper. What do we need to know about what the Latino community as a consumer, as a buyer of homes, and what this does for the U.S. economy? What is the state of things, and is it going to get easier right now for Latinos to purchase homes or not?
So, first of all, let's just all recognize that the single most staggering thing that happened in our housing crisis is that Latinos between 2005 and 2009 lost 2/3 of their wealth in this country. Think about that.
Do we feel it?
2/3 of their wealth. And so nobody was hurt harder by the housing crisis than Latinos. Nobody has more potential to benefit going forward. 2/3 of our growth, you just heard, is going to come in the next 40 years from Latinos. Who's going to buy homes in this country? It's going to be Latinos. And so this is a huge issue that you raise. First of all, because Latinos were hurt hardest, we have to do more to help them recover. Right now, when you look at Arizona, Nevada, Florida, all the states that have our highest share of Latinos, those are the places where the housing decline was the worst. And there's still millions of Latino families that are underwater in their mortgages. So one thing that we're doing, we took steps, the president talked about in his State of the Union address, to dramatically increase refinancing for homeowners. You're underwater, we have under 4% interest rates, but you can't refinance because you're underwater. Millions of, and these are Latinos who are paying their mortgages, right? They're doing everything they can to stay current and yet haven't been able to benefit. Average savings is over $3,000 a year. So first thing, we have to do more to help them refinance. We've taken steps for government guaranteed mortgages. We've seen in Nevada a 400% increase in refinancing. Congress needs to act in the next few weeks to open up more refinancing. We have 2 bills in front of Congress. Menendez and Boxer have a bill, Feinstein. We need a vote in the next few weeks. That's the first thing.
Okay.
Second thing, we have to make sure that the dream stays alive to be able to buy a home. And right now, I'll tell you, if it weren't for FHA, which is part of HUD, more than half of Latinos who bought homes last year used an FHA mortgage. When you include all government guaranteed mortgages, you're talking about more than 75% of Latinos who bought homes. The problem is, we can't be the only alternative. And so looking forward, we have a fundamental choice. Do we say that you got to have a 20% down payment, that the very few can get home ownership? That's like, we've got ours, we're going to pull up the drawbridge behind us and not let the next generation of Latinos. The president's going to fight for making sure that we continue to have credit available in FHA, but also beyond FHA to make sure Latinos can continue to buy homes.
So, Monica, you are one of a small group of Latinas, frankly, who operate at a very high level in terms of business in this country. And we know, everybody who comes to CHCI, that when we are focused on the issue, like the secretary, the numbers are clear about Latinos. But have you seen a shift in the conversations and the boardrooms where you have been, where the understanding is like, oh my God, if we really don't get a handle on the Latino consumer market and really unleash its potential, do you think that has happened? Or is it still, oh my gosh, this has happened and we're not sure what to do about it? And more of a question of inaction. What do you see?
Oh, I think clearly the conversation is taking place. There's no doubt in my mind. The question is, what do you do about it? So the demographic reality and the shifts in the growth of the Latino population is on everybody's radar screen. From the corporate...
And let me interrupt you. Like, from 20 years ago to now...
Oh, quite different. Today it's an imperative. And I think Monica was talking about it. Businesses see the Latino market as fundamental to their growth strategies. So when you look at the corporate boards, and boards are asking themselves, what sorts of directors do we want around the table? The first thing you say is, what is the role of a director? And clearly it's to help define the strategy going forward. How do you grow the company? How do you use technology? How do you innovate? You want to mitigate risk, because every business has risk. You're working with the CEO around succession for himself as well as for his senior management. And at the end of the day, your fundamental responsibility is to represent shareholders, individuals and institutions that have deposited their money with their company and they're expecting growth. So if you take the responsibilities of a director and you match that with the changing demographics, it's absolutely an imperative to have people around the table that can represent distinct points of view. And so you would never organize a panel and have people that represent the exact same point of view if you want to have a rich conversation and make better decisions. So when you're looking at the consumer population, whether it's domestic or even international, when you think about exports to Latin America, when you think about how do we engage with consumers to be able to build growth in the company, you need to have people around the table that understand those constituencies. So not only is a conversation taking place, but it's now seen as an imperative. The idea of diversity at the corporate level, corporate board level, is a must-do. The question, Maria, is how well are they doing? So today, 16% of the total population, 40+% of the growth over the last 10 years, and yet we haven't moved the needle in terms of the number of Latinos that serve on corporate boards.
That's what I was going to say.
Less than 3%.
Well, I thought
today.
What you were going to say is that when you're having, in the conversation, the boardrooms, when you're trying to figure it out, and you don't have anybody who really knows this community
That's right.
profoundly, then it is the question of, so what do you do? And how do you do it? There is no roadmap, right?
That's right.
Let's bring you in, Representative Pierluisi. So what can you tell us about, in terms of government, what is being done, what can be done specifically?
Well, two things come to mind. There are several programs at the federal government level helping minority-owned businesses, including Hispanic businesses. The ones that come to mind are the ones run by the Small Business Administration and the Department of Commerce. The signature program at the Small Business Administration, SBA, is the 8A program, which basically gives contract set-asides and sole source contracts to minority-owned firms. This year, up to now, 1,400 Hispanic-owned businesses are participating in the Section 8 or 8A SBA program. Last year, you're talking about 1,700 for the whole year. And in terms of the amount of money at stake in these contracts, you're talking about close to $5 billion. So that's an opportunity for Hispanic-owned businesses. The federal government does business amazingly all over the states. You're talking about goods, services, construction projects. And I, for one, along with other colleagues in Congress, are encouraging the federal agencies to increase the set-asides that they have for business or contracts with with minority-owned businesses. Hispanic-owned businesses take about 25% of these contracts right now. Another area that comes to mind, well, another agency that is quite active, I have to say, is the Minority Business Development Agency at the Department of Commerce. So in Congress, we're also keeping an eye so that it's adequately funded. That agency, what it does is helps Hispanic businesses do business with other corporations, larger corporations. Technical support and so on is given to them. But one thing that I have to mention is exports. Our President Obama, has the goal of doubling our exports by the year 2014. And we're on our way to go there. And why do I raise this? Because we Hispanics are bicultural by background. And Latin America, Central and South America has become a huge market. And so all these Hispanic businesses out there can exploit their cultural ties, family ties, business ties with their countries of origin, back home. And that's an area of opportunity that we should be dealing with. And I encourage all Hispanic business people to go for it.
I mean, that is, I guess, another part of the changing the narrative, as opposed to seeing this part of the world as sucking or just sending. There are huge business opportunities, huge markets. So, Shaun, the elephant in the room, I suppose, is the issue of labor, whether it is documented or undocumented. I mean, everywhere I go, I've been to 49 of the 50 states. Me falta North Dakota. Get there one of these days soon. you know, I see Latino labor everywhere, everywhere. Most of the time, and I'm often, you know, tweeting about it or Facebooking, because to me, it's always the invisible, right? Still, I mean, we have Monica, we have, you know, we've made huge inroads, okay? But in general, still, when you're talking about Latino labor, it is almost like it's the invisible labor. So tell us the role of labor. And then I want to, before we move into our audience questions, the role of the labor movement that people are seeing potentially could be restarted by Latinos in this country.
Sure, Maria. Well, I think you've really put your finger right on it here, that Latinos do so much of the work of this country and are relatively undercompensated for it and relatively underrecognized for it. And the way the American labor movement views this is that a critical question about whether or not this country's economy will revive and prosper, and whether or not we will have a robust American middle class in the 21st century, is whether Latinos in our workforce in America will be able to turn the bad jobs that are so prevalent in our economy today into good jobs. It is the central question facing our economy and facing our country. That effort is underway today in the American labor movement. There are 2.2 million Latino union members in America today. And Latinos are rising to leadership across our movement, but in particular in America's greatest cities. In New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles. The local labor movements, which have, in just those three cities, millions of people, are all led by Latinos. Maria Elena Durazo in Los Angeles, Vincent Ramirez in New York City, Jorge Ramirez in Chicago, a man who's rather busy today, I believe.
I would say.
And these are among the most dynamic people leading the American labor movement today. But even more importantly, if you look down at the grassroots level, right, in the workforce, at what is going on, the most innovative things that are happening in the labor movement today are being led by Latino workers. And the AFL-CIO, representing 55 member unions and 12 million American workers, has been on an active effort under the leadership of President Trumka, who is ill today, by the way, and sends his most profound greetings and regrets to all of you. He couldn't be with you today. Under President Trumka's leadership, we have reached out to partner with organizations that may not call themselves unions, but are every bit as much about representing workers as unions. We have a partnership with the National Day Laborers Organizing Network, which represents worker centers all across this country. As part of that partnership in Texas, for example, the Worker Defense Project, a worker center, and the Texas Labor Movement partnered to try to make workplaces, construction workplaces, where overwhelmingly the workforce was Latino, safe. Because the reality is that across this country, because bad jobs have become so prevalent over the last generation, Latinos are in jobs that are more dangerous than the population at large, and as you said, not seen.
And we get injured at higher rates.
Exactly.
And so.
If I just wind up here, here's the punchline, and it ties to what Secretary Donovan was saying about housing. Today, Latinos are paid 60% of what white workers are paid. Latinos' household worth, as a result, because household worth is all about what you make, right, is $7,000. Household worth for white Americans is $90,000 median. Right? If that is our future, right, the American consumer economy is not going to work, the American middle class is not going to prosper, and our democracy is going to be fundamentally destabilized.
Which, you know, if you think about the question of division in our country and something that we're all witnessing in the middle of this presidential election. So, Secretary Donovan, I actually want to bring in our first Facebook question and give it to you, because it is the other elephant in the room, which is how do we also talk about lost economic opportunities because of unresolved political issues like the Dream Act, the undocumented. So the first Facebook question is, how will the recent decisions from the executive branch to uphold the DREAM, and I would not use this term, uphold the DREAM Act. I do not believe the DREAM Act has been upheld. This is a memo from this Department of Homeland Security. This is not an executive order. Correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary. It is a memo from the Department of Homeland Security. There could have been an executive order. There was not. Having said that, what do you think? This is a 2-year reprieve from possible deportation. I emphasize again, it's in the hands of the agents on the ground who have been rewarded for deporting. So now they're going to be rewarded for not deporting. It's all very complicated. But what does this mean in terms of the economy? In terms of the buying of houses? Specifically when we know, and I've met people at previous CHCIs who just said, I want to buy a house, my husband's undocumented, how could we ever do this? If he gets deported and I'm left. So talk a little bit more about specifics on that.
Let me talk about what it means right now and then also the long term. Right now, as of yesterday, we've started to grant these, as you say, this is not permanent, it's not by force of law, but this was the president saying, I am not going to wait for Congress, simply because our political system is not working the way it should. I cannot wait, and I have to act. And as of yesterday, we have young people in this country who will have a different future because of that action. And I think one of the things that we will see is that we will puncture this myth about that is driving so much of the anti-immigrant rhetoric, is that these kids are our best hopes in America. They're going to help us move forward. But I will tell you, it is only one piece. What has Attorney General Holder done? He has gone after aggressively the anti-immigration laws, the anti-voter laws in a whole range of states, and we're winning in many of those cases.
But let me bring it down to buying a home, because you are the Secretary of Housing. So this does not make it any easier, though, for a family that, let's just say they actually do have money for a down payment, but the status issue is unresolved, and therefore all of these homes are not being potentially bought.
Absolutely right. And the president would never say this is a substitute for Congress acting. We need comprehensive immigration reform. And you said I'm the Secretary of Housing. I'm also the son of an immigrant. And my father, Michael Donovan, grew up speaking Spanish before he spoke English in Costa Rica and Lima, Peru. And he came to this country as a student, still has a green card today. If his name had been Hinojosa or Gonzalez, where would his life be today? Would he own a home? Would he have built a business in this country? And what we're talking about, homeownership is one piece of it. What we're talking about is a nation of immigrants where our future, you've heard a very moving presentation of what all the statistics are. Let's talk about it on a personal basis. I wouldn't be here, and most of us, whether we're Latino or not, wouldn't be here if we weren't a nation of immigrants. So we have a fundamental choice about whether we're going to be open in this country to building an economic future or not.
So, Monica, let me just bring you in and start getting up. Your questions can be taken on the microphones here. We are still stuck, though, because the fact that, this anti-immigrant / anti-Latino sentiment has been allowed to percolate means that there are issues that are unresolved. How do we move forward in an economy where there is this reality of estancamiento, stagnant? It does. I mean, what would happen if these undocumented people could, in fact, freely open businesses, buy cars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as opposed to buying bicycles, which we know they're buying now because they can't drive. So our people are now on bikes more and more and more.
I think there's clearly an economic agenda behind immigration reform that we should focus on. And if we think back to IRCA, which passed in 1986, which was the Immigration Reform and Control Act from back then, it took 10 years. It was a process, but it took 10 years. And by 1995, people of them were eligible to become citizens. At that moment, we were coming out of a recession. And what do we see? When people came out of the shadows, we came out of the recession. People were buying houses, they were feeling empowered, they were becoming a part of their neighborhood, they were volunteering. There was a sense of ownership that comes with legalization or regularization of status that I think is an imperative. But having said that, this issue around dreamers I just think is so critical because education is a gateway. We understand that. And so these are young people that have committed themselves to give the very best and to excel in their educational studies. They really are the future. And as the economy changes and we become less service-oriented and more knowledge-based, we need to have people that can help this country compete. And that means relying on young people that are the future of this country, that have committed themselves with everything they have to be the very best. And so the deferred action is not a permanent solution, but at least we begin to see a change in people's attitudes that says, you know what, we're going to believe in these young people, and hopefully we'll be able to get Congress and others to leverage and move the needle. But this economy will require Latinos to be able to drive competitiveness in the future.
Absolutely, especially the film industry. How many of you knew that 1 in every 4 movie theater tickets is sold to a Latino? Hello. That's because when we go to the movies, vamos con toda la familia, right? Yeah. All right, you guys, you're not going to believe this. Who can tell me what time it is exactly? Because my watch is like
10:20 after 10.
10:20.
20, okay, 10:20. So we have 10 minutes to get all of your questions and continue to talk. It's going to be rough. Here's what I'd like to do, if you guys rock and roll with me. Give your name, where you're from, and your question, and try to make it really succinct. And I'm going to take 1, 2, and 3 question, and then we'll talk, and then we'll have a next round of questions, okay? So just be brief.
Jocelyn Olasco, class president of 2015 from Parkdale High School in Maryland. My question is towards the issue of labor. Do you believe that Hispanics are dealing with the issues that immigrants had to deal with in the progressive era, such as in the book The Jungle by Sinclair that the Lithuanian family had to deal with?
Love it. Thank you. Nice question. Wonderful. Thank you.
Janie Castillo, Oakland Oakland Housing Authority Commissioner. Hi, Shaun.
Hey there.
One of the things I noticed when I first came on as a commissioner last year is that only 2% of the 15,000 families that Oakland serves are Latinos. So I'm curious whether this is going on throughout the United States and what can we do about it. And being a person who used the subsidy in order to buy a home, eventually I think it's so many opportunities to move our families who are at $7,000 or less using subsidized housing and then into homeownership.
Can you give us that statistic again one more time? 2%.
In the city of Oakland, only 2% of the 15,000 families that we served are Latinos.
Oh. And that's in Section 8 or public housing or Section 8?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Carmen Romero, I'm from El Salvador. My question is, you think that during this election time, after like whoever the president is going to be, you think that there's going to be more stuff about undocumented people, like more laws and stuff like that to help students get into a better education and have a better life in this country?
Ay, mijita, esa pregunta is $64,000. Gracias. You said it very nicely. All right. So, the jungle, the house, the undocumented people. All right. Who wants to go first? But let's just keep it brief so that we can get to another round of questions.
I mean, that's just a tremendous, the question that was posed about the jungle, just a tremendous question.
And all of you should read that.
I read that book in high school. I'm very impressed to see others are reading it today. The answer is unquestionably yes, but I'll tell you why this question should sting. When I read that book in the 1970s, what it said to me was, look at how tough it was for my ancestors. My ancestors were immigrants. My ancestors were immigrants in New York, right? They left illegally. They didn't come. They didn't have undocumented issues in the United States, but they left illegally, right? They came to New York. My great grandfather was planning to throw himself off the Brooklyn Bridge if he couldn't find a dime to eat.
Wow.
Okay? That's the type of story that's in the book, The Jungle. When I read that book in the 1970s, I thought, this is what the labor movement ended. This type of America where people work to provide for their families and are crushed in jobs that pay them not enough to build a decent life and, in fact, often injure and kill them. This is what we ended in America, and we now have a middle-class society where that kind of thing does not happen. And today, if you listen to the numbers I went through earlier, right, and you read The Jungle in school, you are reading an analogy to what is happening today and happening more to Latinos and other new immigrants than to anyone else in our society. Right? And that has got to end.
So I guess the answer to the question is C, and then the question really then becomes, so what will workers who decide to become involved in the labor movement do?
Maria, can I just
Yes.
add one thing? I'm sorry, because
Absolutely.
I think part of this is, clearly the role that unions play, but one of the things that so concerns me, we were talking about this earlier, is that Latinos have rights in this country, whether you're documented or you're undocumented, and yet laws and initiatives like Secure Communities, where people are now afraid to come forward because there's a question about whether or not there's a collaboration between one agency and another agency. So part of this is also educating and informing people of their rights and creating an environment where people feel like they can come forward if in fact they are suffering the kinds of discrimination and unfair practices that are being described.
This is such an important point, and one of the most important things we do at HUD is enforce the Fair Housing Act. And so John Trezviña, who is our Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, not only have we been very strong, brought the largest number of cases in a decade against discrimination, both legal and illegal immigration or immigrants who are here. They all have rights not to be discriminated against, and we've been aggressive. But we've also been traveling the country to educate folks on their rights. To Hoover, Alabama, where the most pernicious anti-immigration laws, there are still rights there that we have to defend and put forward. I also want to just say one other thing specifically about this question on Oakland. One of the problems that we have, Latino growth has meant that often they're at the back of the line for housing assistance or other things. And the fundamental problem here, in part, is are we going to continue to invest in those things? If we continue to cut the budget for Section 8 housing and public housing and a whole range of other things, if we don't fix this fiscal cliff in a fair way that actually asks higher income Americans to pay their fair share, Latinos are going to have to continue to wait at the back of the line because there just isn't enough to go around. And that's a fundamental problem in our housing system, but it's a much bigger problem that is a huge issue when we make a decision about what our investments are going to be in Congress. I don't need to tell my neighbor here. This is a fundamental choice. Is everybody going to pay their fair share, or are we going to balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable and our most recent Americans? And it's simply unfair.
On the immigration issue, I cannot resist saying something that is blatant, is obvious. It has become so politicized that it's all about the election. Just in the last Congress, we didn't get one single Republican senator supporting the DREAM Act. Think about that, not even one. And in this Congress, it's been a hopeless cause to try comprehensive immigration reform or the DREAM Act. Why? Because it has become a red-button issue for Republicans. None of them, very few. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen from Florida, I have to give her credit. She's a co-sponsor of the DREAM Act, the one that we introduced in the House. So it's unfortunate. That's why the president, as Secretary Donovan well said, frustrated, said, he's a champion of a comprehensive immigration reform. He says, let's do this deferred action policy. Let's set it in place. And at least for 2 years, but they can get extensions. These dreamers can stay here, contribute, educate themselves, get work permits. So that's what we're doing. So I say it, if this is an important issue for you, Get out and vote.
Bueno, claro. I mean, I think that everybody in the audience is very aware that, you know, what we're living through is actually a word that I learned in Mexico when I was there in January doing a delegation investigating violence against women. And it's called simulación, where the government says it's doing something, but it's really a simulation. Nothing is really happening. I think that we're all living it here. The fact is that we on this panel could have spent a lot more time talking about dollars and cents and growing markets, and we're talking about una cuestión que no está resuelta, por Dios. I know you want to say something, but I really want to get the questions in because we're going to wrap. We have 1 minute and 5 seconds. Go ahead, rápidamente.
Hi, I'm Daniela Hernandez Fujigaki. I'm a student at Clarksburg High School, and I was just wondering if you've seen an increase in Latino white-collar workers in the past couple of years, and if you see an increase in the next years, and how drastic.
Okay, we hope so, or else. Yes.
Araceli Panameño with the Center for Responsible Lending. How are you, Shaun?
Good to see you.
This question is for you. You yourself quoted that Latinos over this financial and fiscal crisis have lost 66% of their wealth. And that means that our cash reserves have been wiped out. And as we speak, and we haven't resolved the foreclosure crisis, we are now drafting rules for the future of housing. And there has been a proposal put forth and now moving through about 10% down payment requirements that would completely eliminate over 50% of potential Latino home buyers in the market. What is HUD and the administration prepared to do? We don't believe that requiring 10% down payment would actually increase the opportunity of home ownership for Latinos.
You want it to what, 5%?
We actually believe that the market should set, but 3% on FHA, for example, has demonstrated to do its job in terms of preventing foreclosures, which is what the intent is, to do good performance, prevent foreclosures, and yet provide opportunity for homeowners.
Thank you. And your question in blue.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Suarez. I'm a student at Richard Montgomery High School in Maryland. I was going to ask a question about the DREAM Act and the undocumented thing.
Just make it really fast.
Okay, so first I wanted to ask, why is this even a controversial issue? What prevents Republicans from wanting to grant students the opportunity to, study and get a job?
Another $64,000 question. Go ahead.
Okay, so what's in their mindset? Why do they want to prevent this? Why don't they just want to give everyone an education? Because isn't that what they want for their children? Don't they want a brighter future for their children?
I love high school.
So why don't they want to prevent other people from doing that? Thank you.
Bravo. Oh, goodness. Sebastian, let me just say, don't you ever lose your style in the way you talk and the way you dress, is all I'm saying. You heard it here first. That man's going to run for president. All right, so we've got no time to answer these questions. Can I get a minute to just go around?
Just go around?
Just go around. I mean, answer the questions as you will. It's hard, you guys, but...
So 2 points. I can't account for the Republicans or the people whose votes they are trying to get on this issue, but I can tell you that what the labor movement is doing about the DREAM Act is that we are 1,000% behind it. We have hosted the Dreamers when they marched. We are working with UCLA to set up a Dreamers University to particularly meet the needs of working people who have rights now through this act, through the letter. And we are just totally committed both to that and to the cause of comprehensive immigration reform and a path to citizenship. And the point is, it's not what they're doing, it's what we can do. The second point I'm going to make is this. You've got to listen to the way in which these issues tie together. That there's not going to be a rise in Latino white-collar workers, and white-collar workers is not the right category. It's Latino high-wage, high-productivity jobs unless the education system is properly funded. And the education system's not going to be properly funded unless we ask the wealthiest among us to pay their fair share in taxes as the president has asked. Understand those two things are one question. All right? And we are not going to be a great country if we don't end the caste system that the exclusion of the undocumented has created. We are not going to have adequate demand for our consumer goods. We're not going to have adequate skilled workers. We are not going to have a democracy worthy of America's past.
And Monica, you got the last word? I mean, we'll go right.
Yes, so let me just shift a little bit. And from the point of view of a business owner, you know, our company was started by my grandfather. He was an immigrant from Mexico. We've now been in business for 80-something years, third generation. And I think about, you know, the role that Latino-owned small business plays, the economic engine, you know, offering employment. But I do think that there's a responsibility by the business community towards these social issues. And, you know, clearly it's about, you know, doing well for your family. It's about doing well for your employees. But we have an opportunity to step out. And one of the things that I don't see the business community doing, not the Latino business community and not the general business community, is stepping out and taking a stand and saying we are going to be on the right side of these issues. We're going to demand quality education for our kids. We're going to make sure that people have the opportunities to live in a safe environment, to advocate for immigration. So I guess my final word is that we want to be on the side of what's right. And the imperative for Latino business owners is to actually accept that charge and to stand up and begin to, as a coherent voice, begin to weigh on these issues of inequality and justice in this country.
Secretary.
So there was a very specific question about down payments. And
you're going to take them down to 3%, right?
Actually, we're still doing 3.5% down payment loans at FHA, and they're working. As I said, there's a reason why more than 50% of Latinos who bought homes last year used FHA, because there aren't opportunities in the rest of the market right now. So I am very concerned that we are going to go too far on this, that there have been proposals that would require across the board a 20% down payment. I think that's a mistake, and it's something that we're working hard to make sure doesn't happen. But there's a broader issue here, right? Are we going to blame the victims for what happened in the housing crisis, right? If the narrative that some are saying that, well, these people shouldn't have bought homes, and that's what caused the housing crisis, then that leads you to solutions that say, let's pull up the drawbridge behind us, and it's going to cut off Latinos from having access to home ownership. We have to make sure that the real story about what happened in the housing crisis gets out there. That's why the president's fought for the biggest Wall Street reform we've had. He's created a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. All of these are a piece of really going back and saying what happened in this crisis and who are the real victims here. And the Latino community was. One other thing I have to say, CHCI has been an amazing partner to us. We've had great interns. We want more of them. And I want to recognize Charlie Gonzalez, our congressman who led the CHCI for the past year, and also Congressman Hinojosa that has taken over as a leader, and say just remarkable job, CHCI.
Representante, la palabra final.
Well, the question about why Republicans oppose the DREAM Act, because in their minds, most of them, okay, it's all about law enforcement. They don't think about anything else. And they take it to the extreme of even blaming young people who came in through no fault of their own, just because their parents brought them along. And they're, you know, basically frustrating their dreams. It makes no sense. Any good public policy should be balanced, should be fair. And that's what comprehensive immigration is all about. When we talk about comprehensive immigration, we're not talking about simply a pathway to citizenship. There are also enforcement aspects that we would have to deal with because the system is clearly broken. You have 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. That speaks for itself. So that's my reaction. It's unfortunate. Let's hope that more of them come and, come to sense, and we can have some bipartisanship on the DREAM Act issue as well as comprehensive immigration.
Porque la realidad es que nadie se va, right? No nos vamos.
Yeah, they're here to stay.
Aquí nos quedamos. I want to thank everybody for your questions were wonderful. Our panelists here, distinguished secretary for coming. Thank you so much. Remember to watch PBS. And we'll see you around. Have a great rest of your conference. Thank you.